what I'm hoping to do with this is that we can all have a discussion together about uh, David's life and the things that we're talking about. Let's see if, hey, Stephen, I think Stephen's driving and has it up to listen to while he's driving. So we'll talk, and if I get to talking too much, just holler at me, and I'll turn the floor over to you. Let's begin with a word of prayer, and then we'll get into our discussion. Our most dear, most wonderful Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you give us, all that we have, for the opportunity and the technology, dear Father, that we can come together like this and to study the life of David together. Be with us this summer, Father, as we study in the life of David, a man after your own heart, and that we can learn how to be men after your own heart as well. Be with us, bless us, and help our efforts. Pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
All
Amen.
right. So I want to begin in Psalm 78. And what I thought I would do is I can share my screen here. Can y'all see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Jim.
All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I got Psalm 78. Hey, Stephen.
Hey,
Steve making me nervous driving with his camera
No,
on
no.
and saying he can see the screen.
I'm sorry. I can't see any of y'all, but you might be able to see. Keep me awake.
Yeah. Well, let us know if we need to dial 911.
All right.
I think we'll be able to tell.
in in Psalm 78, which is a different place to start with when you're talking about the life of David, this is a maskil of Asaph, and in it, he is recounting the history of Israel and how that they did not keep God's covenant, they did not obey God, but yet here was God blessing them and doing for them, from Egypt to the wilderness wanderings. But when you get all the way down to verse 70, he talks about here that God chose David, his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the nursing ewes, he brought him to shepherd Jacob, his people, Israel, his inheritance. With an upright heart, he shepherded them and guided them with his skillful hand. I love the summary that Asaph gives here about David, about what he did, that he is a shepherd who becomes the shepherd of God's people. And I think that's interesting to see as we start our study together. All right, so really this story begins in 1 Samuel 16, where the Lord is ready to choose a new king because he's had enough of Saul. But really the story begins further back than this. It begins really with Samuel. Samuel is, he, um, 1 Samuel 8, he's an old man now, and his sons are not pleasing to God. They're no good, and so the people want a king. And in 1 Samuel 8, they're asking for a king. What I think is interesting about that is, if y'all can remember, what was Samuel's warnings against the king? What's his warning to them?
He'll take a large portion of everything that they have.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Taxation with no representation.
Their sons, their daughters.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sons and daughters will become his servants. He's going to take from you. It's not going to be good for you. In fact, verse 18, verse 17, I'm sorry, verse 18, and that day you will cry out because of your king whom you have chosen for yourselves, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. And, you know, we begin to see in chapters 13 through 15 the problems with Saul. And first of all, what was what was Saul like when he first became king?
Well, he was a tall, uh, handsome. I guess more of a something to look at than the qualities of a king.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, he looked the part, right? He whatever you imagine it, that's what it is. He was that part. And but yet what was the flaw that Saul had? What's his flaw?
Want to think he was, I know, jealous of David later on. Some jealousy was a problem with his,
Yeah.
but that may not be what you're looking for.
Jealousy is a factor. What other flaws did he have?
Well, he didn't. I think of when David came and said he would go against Goliath. Saul was not one to. He didn't trust in God enough to go and do that himself.
Yeah. 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 He lacked trust in God. He lacked faith. Um, he thought he could do things his way and not God's way. Uh, he was also a political weasel. He wanted to do whatever, you know, gained him favor. Matter of fact, if you remember when uh, in 1 Samuel 15, when Samuel rebukes Saul, Saul is still asking for him to come with him, you know, and put on a good show, a good front for him. And Samuel's refusing to do it. Remember, and Samuel goes away, and Saul grabs his garment, and it tears, and he says, "So will God tear the kingdom from you," which is just, you know, definitely demonstrative of Saul's kingship. Um, so Saul is no good for Israel, just like Samuel said would happen, just like God said would happen. And now it is time for God to choose a new king here. And so First Samuel 16 is God providing a king. Uh, Now, what's interesting to me here is when you start in chapter 16 and verse 1, what question is Saul, or what question is the Lord asking Samuel here? What's he asking him?
How long will you grieve over Saul?
Yeah. How long will you grieve over Saul? Why is Samuel grieving over Saul?
Because he's the Lord's anointed.
Yeah. He's the Lord's anointed. He was the first king. And you think about all the time that Samuel had invested in teaching Saul and preparing him to be the king that the people needed, the Lord wanted, yet Saul failed in his purpose. Uh, remember, Saul was supposed to be the one to solve Israel's spiritual problems. Remember, Samuel's sons couldn't do it. No more judges after Samuel. He was going to be the one to fix everything. And instead, it just got worse. So I don't know how long Samuel is grieving here, but clearly he is down the dumps about this, and he's upset. And God is ready to move forward. You know, he said, "Hey, let's get up. Let's fill your horn with oil. Let's go get a new king." Um, so where do they end up going?
Jesse.
Yeah, Jesse's house. And for sake of time, we'll sort of skip through here. He's concerned about Saul hearing it; he'll kill him. And so he said, "Well, tell him that you're there to come to sacrifice to the Lord. Prepare that." So they go. He goes. Now, verse 4 tells us that Samuel came to Bethlehem. The elders of the city came to meet him, trembling, saying, "Do you come peaceably?" Why are they trembling, and why do they ask Samuel if he's coming peaceably?
Well, Samuel had they recognized Samuel as a speaker of God's word, and
Yeah,
uh, he carried the authority of. They knew that he carried the authority of God.
that's right. Uh, what's what's the typical reaction? Maybe Jay can answer this better than us. But what's the typical reaction folks have when there's a knock on the door and they open it up and there's, you know, policemen in uniform?
Nervous.
Scared out of my mind.
What's that, Stephen?
Scared out of my mind. What have I done?
What have I done? Right? What? Oh no. What's going on? What have I done? What am I being accused of? Uh, I get that sense here, right? The people are. It's here comes the judge. The judge is coming to town, and usually judge doesn't come for a good reason, although he is now. But they're like, "Do you come peaceably?" Peaceably, I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Oh, okay. Woo, that's good. Um, so
Aaron, he would also be
go ahead.
associated with the king.
True.
And given the rule of a king in this day and age, if the king's messengers come to your house uninvited, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, it's probably not. You're probably gonna lose some sons to the army or in the service of the king, as we saw in Samuel 8, right? So, it doesn't seem like a good thing. Um, but he's there. He's looking for the Lord's anointed. Verse 6, he sees the first son of Jesse, and what does he think? Oh, Elab. Yeah, oh, Elab. What's Samuel think of Elab?
He had a good appearance.
Oh man,
Stature.
this guy looks
He
the
got to be
part.
the. He's got to be the one.
He's got to be the one. He's his appearance. I mean, he just had that kingly look about him. His height, kind of sort of reminiscent of Saul in that way. That it reminded him of Saul. Like this has got to be it. And God says, no, nope, not him. And why not him?
Because the Lord looks on the heart.
The Lord looks in the heart. And that really is the first time that we see, or not first time, but first time in our study that we see this discussion of God's heart. And we're going to see that God chooses David, right? He goes through all the sons, and not one of them is the anointed one until finally, right? Samuel's like, anyone else here? You got anyone else? Well, yeah, I got the youngest, but I mean, he's keeping the sheep. We'll bring him here. And then he sees or God tells him that this is him. This is the one here, and anoint him because he is a man after God's own heart. Uh, what what do you think about that designation, a man after God's own heart? What does it even mean to be a man after God's own heart?
I think of
of
being,
sin. Sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
no, I'm sorry. I think of being close to someone, I guess from a standpoint today is someone looking at you and saying, this is my right hand man right here. I can depend on him. I trust him. I know that he'll do what I ask or tell him to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about it that in those terms, my right hand man. That's a good way to look at that, right? He's interested in the things that God is interested in. He cares about God. He wants to do what's right, and those are all the qualities that God says that this is what I'm looking for a king. Um, Now, what I think is interesting here, uh, and I'm just going to skip down. Um, David, verse 19, uh, Saul sends for David. Right, send me David, your son, who is with the sheep. I find that interesting too. We, for all we know, David is probably a young teenager in his, 15, 16 years old, as best we can tell. He's just been anointed by Saul, the final judge, to be the new king. And what's he doing?
He's with the sheep.
He's with the sheep. That's interesting to me, right? That David didn't get the big head. And like, I mean, can you imagine that with his brothers? Hey, Elab, you go out there with the sheep, right? You think you look like the king? I am going to be the king. He didn't do that. He goes back to tending the sheep, which says a lot about him. Uh, in fact, he goes into the service of the king here, and he seems to have a humble spirit about that. As we'll see along the way with the relationship between David and Saul, that David is still respectful of Saul. David didn't change his attitude. He still serves. He serves his father. He serves his family. He serves the king. Um, you know, and that to me is pretty interesting.
I think it's a respect that he has for God because Saul was his anointed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right.
I mean, it'll play out later on when David's companions, well, basically Saul's life was given to David 2 or 3 times that he could have killed him, and no, it ain't going to happen. That's God's anointed.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, I think he even asked the question, "Who am I? Who am I to do this?" Right? I mean, that humble attitude of, well, David, you're the anointed one. But he doesn't look at it that way. He doesn't call himself the anointed one. All right.
It's interesting that Samuel in the first part of chapter 16 is fearful that Saul is going to kill him as he is going to anoint David. I wonder, it doesn't tell us that I can see that David's told that he's going to be the anointed king. And while they don't have very much history with kings in Israel, the surrounding kings they would know about. And history would say that, if you're going to be, or even the judges, there's history there about I'm going to be judged, therefore I'm going to kill off all of my possible running mates, right? They're the ones that are going to contend against me being king. So you have to wonder if David's like, well, there's nothing for me to do right now. Saul is still king. I'm going back to the sheep.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I want this job anyway.
That's right.
No, I guess that wouldn't be after God's own heart, but that's a
Yeah.
thought that I had.
Yeah, what it shows a humble spirit, right?
Mhm.
That he'll humbly do it, and maybe look at the same way as God um, wanting elders to serve in the church, right? Nobody is supposed to take up that mantle with some sort of pride of, I am the anointed one of the Lord, but of a servant of I'll do what I can to help and serve the Lord, and if it's this capacity, then that's what I'll do.
Well, looking at it like that, since you put it that way, I could almost see David having a fear, a fear of being anointed to of what position he's fixing to be in. I can see a fear there that
Yeah.
that he would let God down, and ultimately he does a little bit, but he
Mhm.
was still after God's own heart.
I think that's where the Psalms helps us too, because we see some of that in the Psalms where he's concerned about, serving the Lord. He's concerned about the enemies, that he wasn't this hero who didn't have any fears, uh, but he went to God with them, with his concerns.
Well, and you also killed the lion and right, I mean, and then a giant. So he's an interesting character.
He is. He is. Um, that's a great segue. Thank you, David. Let's talk a little bit about 1 Samuel 17. Um, we open up 1 Samuel 17, and there's an there's an there's a battle that's about to take place. Armies have gathered to fight. The Philistines on one side, Israel on the other. Um, the Philistines are deep into the territory of Judah here. So this is not neutral ground that they are at. They're nowhere near their border or land. So they've made their way deep into the land of Israel. I think it's important to see here that you know Saul has allowed that to happen, not willingly, but by complacency. And so here the Philistines are taking advantage of the problems that are taking place in Israel, and they're pouncing. And so here they've come to battle. But rather than have a bloody battle between two armies, the Philistines have another idea. And what's their idea?
They choose a champion out of whoever, you know, whoever won was the army would serve the other.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just, instead of everyone dying, we'll just have one die, and we'll end up serving the other. Um, Now, the Philistines proposed this because they had something in their back pocket, and that was what?
Had a 9-foot giant.
A 9-foot giant. That's right.
They have
You
an ace.
know, what's that?
They got an ace.
Yeah, they got an ace. That's right.
They're sort of rigging the game.
Yep. Oh yeah. So hey, there's no way Israel has what we've got here. This bronze helmet wearing, bronze armored, bronze, all that weighing over about 200 pounds, carrying a bronze javelin, the head of a spear that weighs about 15 pounds. Everything about his description that we're given here is to instill fear.
Yeah, I bet he didn't have to fight anybody. I bet he scared them all off.
In fact, he did, right? For how many days? Does the text tell us?
30,
Close,
30
close.
or 40.
40. Yeah, 40
Yep.
days. So he comes on out. He shouts to the other hill where the armies of Israel is encamped. He makes the challenge. And here's the challenge that's made. Verse 8. Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And
Is
so
there anything significant about the 40? You see 40 in the Bible, 40 days and 40 nights of the flood, 40 nights, 40 days here, and other references. Is this a fixed number, or is this just a figurative number, or what?
that's a good question, Mike. Let me write that down. You know, well, the 40 days we see in Scripture, we see what a lot of God's judgment is involved with 40 days. And I would certainly think God's judgment is being placed here. Of course, it's not really God judging the Philistines. Who really is God judging here? Who do you think God's judging here?
Israel.
Israel, and specifically Saul, right?
So,
Because who remember way back in chapter 8, who is Saul? And what is he supposed to be? Besides king, what was his description?
A head above, a bit head taller than everybody else, and strong and handsome, and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the king's the king of the people.
Yeah. And he is their champion, right? Head above, taller than any of them. And I'm sure, there for 40 days, the people are like, "All right, Saul, you're taller than we are. Have at it. Go get him." But what's Saul doing?
Said Saul was afraid.
He's afraid. He's not going to go out there. He's not going out there against that.
Which is
In fact,
ironically what the people wanted out of a king, was them to go fight their battles for them.
yeah, great point, Rick. Yeah. That's what they wanted, and he said, "Nope, not doing it." He's dismayed and greatly afraid, verse 11. So then we have, at this point, once we've seen this great failure amongst the ranks of these soldiers, and I love military movies. Um, I like. I was thinking about the movie Braveheart. Um, Supposedly, my grandfather was named after him, William Wallace Andrews. So that's also my grandfather's name. I don't. There's no relation, but he before battle he goes and he rallies the troops, and it looks like that they can't stand against England and their technology, but he rallies them and they win the day, and that's what you expect of the king. And instead, what's Saul doing? He's afraid. He's the best match for Goliath, and he's afraid. So afraid that rather than representing Israel and fighting Goliath, he offers to give great riches, give his daughter in marriage, and be free from paying taxes to whomever will go up against this giant. Which sounds like a great deal, right? Wealth, power, no taxes.
The taxes, yes.
And anyone taking up Saul and his offer?
Not yet.
Not yet, right?
No,
Enter-
they're following his lead.
That's right, exactly. Now the scene shifts in verse 12 to Jesse's three oldest sons. They're at the battle lines where Israel's encamped, David goes back and forth between feeding the sheep at home and, you know, serving Saul. Jesse tells David, take some food supplies to your brothers, see if they're doing well. And so he goes, and he sees what's going on. It just so happens that when he arrives, let me scroll down to it. That just so happens when he does this, he hears Goliath doing his twice daily announcement that he's been doing for 40 days. And what is David's response about this? What is it that David says about this Goliath?
He called it an uncircumcised Philistine for one thing, who
Yep,
should defy the armies of the living God.
that's right. What about an amazing perspective here? It's not defies the armies of King Saul. He says the armies of the living God. Uh, what is Saul's point with that? I'm sorry, what's David's point with that?
That God is in charge.
God is in charge. It's God's army, right? With God on our side, we will be victorious. I always kind of a gripe for me when sports analysts are talking about two teams that are going up against each other, and one looks clearly like they're the winning team. The other one, they're just grateful to be there. And they say another, and if the other team, the small team, wins, David beat Goliath. Um, David's point is Goliath isn't the strong one here. God is the strong one. And so really, it's you could talk about this in relationship between Goliath and Saul, David and Saul, Goliath and God. Um, Nobody's gonna be stronger than God here. And so David's question implies, I would say, well, what does this question imply? David's question. It, Victory is ensured. Yeah. For the one who goes up against the Philistine, hey, they're going to be victorious because they're part of the armies of the living God. Now, no one else thinks this way. No one else has this faith. Everyone else is looking at the size and the strength of Goliath, but David has a different perspective. And I think that's the key to all this.
The word uncircumcised in this place doesn't mean necessarily just uncircumcised, but it was an expression of contempt, what it amounts to.
Yeah. An insult. He's insulting him. Yeah. Yeah. David's not showing any respect for Goliath. Because he's as good as dead as far as David's concerned. Now, the brothers of David, they are very supportive of David, aren't they?
No.
No, not at all. What is it that the oldest brother says to him?
He says his anger kindled against him, and why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart, for you come down to see the battle.
Yeah, yeah. He insults him. He insults David. And you don't belong here. You left a couple of sheep in the wilderness. The only reason why you're here is because you're arrogant and have an evil heart. Well, what's David's response?
His own brother didn't know his heart, but God did.
Exactly right. Exactly right. What's David's question for Eliab?
What have I done now?
What have I done now? Right? Which is a typical brother question, right? What have I done now? Um, I'm just saying, hey, let's have some perspective here. You know, David is saying, basically wondering what everyone's waiting for, right? That this is as good as done. Why are we sitting here for 40 days? All right, so verse 32, um, David volunteers. Don't let anyone be discouraged by Goliath. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine. Now, again, what is the fact that he said your servant here? What does that demonstrate about David's character?
Even though he's been anointed, he still considers himself a servant of the king, and is humbling himself before the king as God's chosen.
Yeah, absolutely. That he, again, still in that perspective of where I am, he knows exactly where he is. He doesn't have a big head about who he is, unlike what his brother claimed. I'm your servant, I'll go fight him. Uh, and then, as David mentioned a moment ago, he gives some examples of why he feels that he's qualified to do this. Um, you know, um, what's the qualifications that David has?
Bear and lion killer. I mean, that's it besides sheep herder,
Yeah. Um,
at least for a battle.
so David says, my prowess with the slingshot is unparalleled. I mean, I took out a lion and a bear. I've got this. I've got the skills to do this. Verse 37, what's his skill? The Lord. The Lord delivered me, right? He knows the Lord will help him because he's helped him in the past, and he's not looking at the physical aspects of Goliath. He's looking at what God has done for him in the past here. So, in essence, what do we say about what does David have here in his arsenal?
Tremendous faith in God.
Absolutely. Tremendous faith. Um, and it's not unwarranted. It's faith based on evidence. And what's the evidence that David has?
He delivered him from the lion and from the bear.
Yeah. Hey, he's delivered me in the past. God is the same. Uh, and he'll rescue me again. Um, so he's relying on those past experiences to help him with that evidence that his faith is not unwarranted in God. So they're ready for battle. Saul clothes David with his armor. What's the problem with the armor?
It's too heavy for him. He couldn't manage it.
Yeah, it's heavy. In fact, verse 39, he had not tested them. What's he mean by he hasn't tested them?
Basically, he's never wore that stuff before. He's never been a soldier,
Right.
and I will never. I will, after that men's meeting, I'll never think of this particular verse any different than what Leah's father pointed out. How he has not tested them, but he has tested God. I mean, he's been tested with his faith in God, and and it's just like the word that we have. The word has been tested, and it's proved
Yeah.
true. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget that that point that he brought out in that study.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah. He didn't
Uh,
have that armor when he was with the bear and the lion. Go ahead, Mike.
Saul was a large man. David was probably as petite or small. So, I mean, he couldn't wear it. I mean, it's way too big for him.
Yeah. He's like, it's too big. It's not tested. But after all, he went up against the bear and the lion without the armor. So he simply takes what with him? What does he take?
Is he okay?
Sling 5 stones.
Sling 5 stones, takes a staff in his hand, and he walks up to the Philistine. Now, Goliath, what does Goliath think about all this?
Probably think it's a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke. Like this is funny, and not in a humorous way. It's an insulting way. Um, he's absolutely insulted by this. He wants their champion, and instead we get this Rudy looking youth, a teenager that's come out to him who's not even wearing any armor. He's a trained military fighter, and yet here's David, not a warrior here at this point, and so he mocks David. And what does he say in his mocking, verse 43?
He says, "Am I a dog that you come with me with a stick?"
Yeah, that's right. What's he mean by that?
But it's kind of putting him down for one thing. Is um, normally you treat a dog when it's misbehaving, you pick up a stick and you hit him with it. So that's basically what Saul, I mean, that Goliath is saying about David.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, here's David with his staff, and usually with a dog, if you just raise up the staff, or your stick, the dog cowers and goes away, not wanting to get hit. And Goliath's like, I'm not a dog that you can just come out with sticks. In fact, he goes on to tell David, says, I'll just give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. And then David gives a response that to me is one of the greatest responses to a threat that I've ever heard. He says, you come with me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head, and I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. What's David's perspective here?
That he will be victorious
Yeah, with what?
with the Lord.
With the Lord.
The Lord will deliver Goliath into his hand.
Yeah, God will win this battle, not David. David's emphasis here isn't, hey, I am the new anointed one of Israel. Let me show you what I can do. He's not even Saul, right? You've defiled Saul, so you're going to pay. It's God. It's all about God. It's all about the Lord. All right, so how's the battle go? We all know this from our when we were in Sunday school class, right? Went round and round and round and round. Takes out the stone, slings it, hits Goliath in the forehead. Goliath falls down to the ground. Then David runs up and cuts off Goliath's head and with Goliath's own sword, because David didn't even have a sword with him.
You know, I always thought it was interesting that David picked up 5 stones. When he only needed that one.
Yeah.
That was always interesting.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting. I think 5 stones, because probably how much would fit in his bag was 5 stones. So, and he was prepared with God with helping him. By the way, what are the chances of even a skilled slingshotter killing this Philistine and winning this battle
On the first shot,
on the first shot?
slim.
Slim, yeah. So I thought it'd be interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. It's not on that one. No, I think I put it here. Yeah. So I printed it. I asked AI just for fun, what are the odds that David could defeat Goliath without God's help? That without God helping David, what are the odds that David could defeat Goliath? And what's that?
1 out of 100.
Yeah. Well, AI said that the chances are astronomically low, essentially zero from a human perspective. And it said, here's why. Goliath's physical advantage, right? 9 foot tall, bronze armor, carries a massive spear, battle experience, that he's a seasoned warrior from youth. We saw that in verse 33. So, he knows attacking tactics, he knows defensive tactics. In contrast, David's a young shepherd with no military combat training, unarmed by comparison, other than the slingshot, no sword, no armor, and even ridiculed and teased by his own people for the challenge. So like no moral support from the army behind him. So I thought that was interesting. That no one expected David to win apart from David and God.
And Aaron, back in verse 48, it's even more amazing that it says he didn't he hurried towards him. There was no hesitation. His faith was so strong. And even though, he was against all odds, he didn't hesitate.
That's a great point, Dexter. He didn't hesitate. Okay, did that work? Did he go down all the way? Is he moving? He ran straight for him. Yeah, that's a great point.
Talking about why he got 5 stones, you could ask, well, why did he even take his slingshot with him? If God was going to fight the battle for him. And I think there's a lesson in that we are to use the tools that God has given us in our battles, even though he is the one that's going to, we have to have faith that he's the one that's going to use that instrument to his advantage and to his purpose.
Yeah.
So just the fact that he goes into battle with his instruments that God has given him the skills to use. Did God guide the stone to hit Goliath in exactly the right spot, be in a spot that was vulnerable outside of his helmet, that allowed it to hit him in the forehead? Most likely that's the case, even though he was certainly a skilled stone thrower. But God certainly had his hand in it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that. Why even bring the slingshot? I think you're right. That God chooses to to use us as his instruments in ways that we can't imagine. I mean, partnering with us to the spreading of his gospel, having us to go out into all the world and preach the gospel to every living creature. And I think maybe for David's part, it would have been presumptuous of himself to go out there with nothing to defend himself with.
Well,
I think,
generally,
go
when you
ahead.
go to combat, you take all the ammo you can carry and more. It's just
Yeah.
how it works. Because you don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
And if you're running low on ammo, then that's not a good thing.
That's right. Yeah.
And God didn't tell him that was the plan for him to hit him between the eyes.
No,
Yeah,
it
didn't tell
didn't.
him that.
It could have been that he hit him between the eyes and dazed him, and he then needed to hit him again,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, great point too. God didn't tell David that's the plan. I'll just take one stone and you'll be fine. God could have, and there's places where God does that, with the children of Israel in Jericho, march around it 7 times, where he gives them explicit instructions, but we don't see that take place here. You're right. Before we finish, I want to make a point that this account really isn't about the fight, which, if you notice, the fight itself only takes 2 verses. All this lead up for just 2 verses about the fight. I think the account is about the speeches that David makes, the big pictures about the glory of God being proclaimed and defended. And I think that that's what we see here is why David is the anointed and why Saul is not. And with the anointed of God, obeying God and serving God, victory is guaranteed. And I think that that's what we see with David here. And David is a type of Jesus, and Jesus is God's anointed, who is sent by God to defeat the enemies that we cannot defeat. Our enemies aren't Goliath. It's Satan, it's sin, it's death. And we can't win those battles on our own. And we've already lost to them in our own sinfulness. But Jesus is the one who can and will defeat those enemies. And I think that's the setup here that we're given between David and Goliath, and a reminder of who Jesus is.
Amen.
Any other thoughts, questions, or comments about 1 Samuel 16 and 17? Thank you all so much for coming on here and participating in our study. I thank you so much for all the participation. That's what I wanted. I didn't want to lecture the whole time. Thank you all for doing that. Let me stop the sharing here, and our next study will be next Tuesday. And let me pull up I should have had this in front of me. On Tuesday, we'll look at 1 Samuel chapters 18, 19, and 20, Psalms 59, 56, and 142. So, there's 3 Psalms and 4 chapters. So, hey, 7 days, 7 chapters. Try to read a chapter a day, and then we'll talk about it together next Tuesday.
Aaron,
Go ahead.
do you have this men's Bible study virtual yet?
No, but I do have a copy. I can send that out virtually. I
if you
do.
would, I'll send that to Dexter because I know he don't have this sheet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm curious on the 90 powerful days in the life of David. How many days did we cover today? And if we're going to do 90 days of study, then that's more than the summer. So I'm just curious how this works out in the title of of the men's study here.
Yeah, yeah. The point is to read these passages each day. Either, a couple of
Oh, okay.
chapters or all of them. Like
Yeah.
we got 7 readings. So the 90 days is on your own. And then once a
Okay.
week we'll come together and talk about what we studied and read.
I didn't know if we were going to cover 90 days, David's days, or if we
Oh
were-
yeah. Yeah. That's a good, that's,
or if we were going to spend almost 2 years on it. So
no. I think we got what, I broke it down on that sheet that I gave out. I think that there's, well, how many? 13? Is it 13 studies?
13 weeks. Yeah.
I must have missed
Yeah.
that one. I don't see it. I didn't see it in my material here. So
Yeah. I'll send it out virtually too. Yeah, it'll finish the end of August. So we're just meeting once a week through August on this study. But yeah, read during the week and talk about it together, and then we'll get back together next Tuesday.
sounds good. More Bible reading on the road there, Stephen. I like it when I drive to work too.
Well, that's the one good thing about the CarPlay is that I can hit a button and listen to the word while I'm driving.
Yep,
That's great.
certainly
That's great,
helps.
sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
be careful driving, Stephen. Be careful getting home.
I sure will. I got about 35 more minutes to go.
Thank y'all again for participating, and
Yep,
hope
I
to see you
enjoyed it.
Tuesday.
All right. Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.